Redditors, what's the creepiest or most mysterious thing you've seen, found, or experienced? I was 17 and my bedroom was at the top of the stairs. My dad worked evening shift and would come home in the middle of the night, eat, watch TV, then go to bed. One night I woke up and as I lay there I heard someone walk up the 3 steps to the landing. I was laying there, waiting for my dad to come on up the stairs, when I heard what sounded like a huge window break. I jumped out of bed, thinking my dad had broken the window on the landing, but also realizing the sound I heard was too loud to be that window breaking. It sounded like a huge window from a department store falling onto the floor. I ran downstairs, followed by my mother who had been awoken by the sound. My dad was behind my mother, woken up by my mom jumping out of bed. We all ran downstairs and there was nothing broken anywhere. My dad took a flashlight and searched outside, around the house, and found nothing. The next day, my dad searched the whole neighborhood and we asked the neighbors. Nothing was ever found and no one but myself and my mom heard the noise. Creepiest thing I've lived. I was on a fishing boat when we came back to coast on the boat. There were these guys walking in the water. It wasn't very deep, and they were calmly asking us to dive in the water and look for their friend to see if he was dead. We all looked at each other and were a little confused, but my friends went looking for that guy while I was calling the police, and the tallest of them told me to hang up. I didn't, but while I was talking to the operator, he kept saying stuff like, "If he is alive, call the police. Don't involve the police unless he is alive." The operator told me that she had contacted the beach to get a team of rescue and that help was on the way, but he kept saying horrible things with no facial expression. He doesn't know how to swim. None of us know. Leave the police out of it. When my friends came to the surface, he said, "Found the body yet? We just want to know if he's dead." And when he saw I wasn't going to hang up, he and his friend just walked away slowly. The look on their eyes was terrifying. It didn't seem to bother them that their friend might be dead. We were 4 dudes and we were scared by these 2 guys. When the rescue team arrived, they told us they didn't find anyone and we told them the same, so we concluded that they were just pranking. Next day, on the news, beach is closed because someone drowned. Because those 2 dudes did not give a shit about their friend, the police thought it could be murder. I have had a lot of weird shit happen since I was a kid, but here's one about something I found. When I was about 8 years old, I was at my sister's softball game with my mom. 2 of the other little sisters and I would always play together, so we took off exploring the park and the surrounding woods. It was an evening game, so my mom just told me to make sure we checked back in when the field lights went on. I was the oldest of the 3, so I was in charge. We went into the massive wooded area beyond left field and played house, using sticks and plants to pretend we were cooking dinner. We noticed a lot of bugs were swarming the area, so we walked over to where they were making a lot of noise. There was a huge object halfway underneath a fallen tree. It was all wrapped up in black garbage bags, and I instantly got a sick feeling in my stomach. Instant intuition told me it was a body. I know kids have a vivid imagination and all, but this thing had what looked like a head at the top, body with arms at the side, and 2 feet at the bottom. It was bound with some duct tape around the neck area and again around where the knees would be. Bugs and maggots were all over it. I don't exactly remember a smell, but that's not to say there wasn't one. We all freaked out and talked about how we seriously just found a body. We used one of the large sticks and poked at it a few times, which just agitated the creepy crawlies, so we started running back towards the entrance. We were nearly out when a man came walking in and asked what we were doing in there. We told him we were just playing and he said he didn't think it was safe for us to be back here alone and we should go back by our parents. He wasn't a creep or anything and I don't think he was involved at all. May have just been one of the softball dads, but it startled us anyway. We started walking back to the bleachers as the lights were coming on and tried to decide if we should tell anyone about what we saw. We didn't want to get into trouble for being in the woods, but we were shaken and couldn't help the feeling that we had just stumbled upon something very serious. When we got by our parents, I tried to tell my mom that we found something really strange that looked like a body. I was nervous laughing and trying to feel out her reaction. She basically brushed it off, but told me she didn't want us in the woods anyway. So we kept quiet about it, but it really haunted me. Later in the week, we were at another game and decided to tell one of the girls' dads about what we saw. He kind of laughed, but then could see how serious we were, so he said he'd walk over there with us and check it out. My mom agreed to let me go since he was with us, and I think she thought we were making it up. So we go back in the woods and find the fallen tree, but there's nothing there now. Of course. My heart sank knowing that nobody would believe us and feeling bad that we hadn't been more adamant earlier in the week. The dad walked over and noticed there were hordes of maggots and other bugs in that spot, and it was clear that something had been laying there because there was a dent in the surface. He told us not to walk over there because it smelled pretty bad and was crawling with insects. I honestly think he believed us in that moment because he looked almost frightened. He rushed us out of the woods and assured us he would tell someone about it. I don't know if he ever did, but to this day I stand by my story that we saw a dead body out there. It wasn't imagination running wild or an exaggerated story for attention. I felt a deep fear and an unsettling that only happens when your intuition is on point. Too long didn't read, found what I'm sure was a dead body in the woods, went back a few days later and it was gone. I used to live with a friend and his family. They live in the woods. Houses are visible to the left and to the right, though with a fair distance between them. But his property extends pretty far back into the woods. A large section of his backyard has a fence around it, and the property extends even farther and is a good bit more woods till you get to someone else's house/backyard. For imagining distances, from the back of his house to the fence is probably a 2 to 3 minute walk. One late night we had a bonfire in his backyard, and we watched this floating yellow light moving around in the woods. The distances it was moving at the speed it was moving seemed way too fast to be a person with a flashlight. It was really moving around quick. Sometimes it seemed it would just be on the inside part of the fence, and other times farther out from the fence. We watched it for a good 30 to 40 minutes just wandering back and forth around in his woods. One of the times it was within the fence line and getting somewhat close to us. A couple of us crept towards it in the woods by about 20 feet, and it retreated farther into the woods. We went back to the fire and it just kept wandering around in the woods. We decided to leave it alone at that point. We weren't about to be led into a dark woods by some strange floating light. Probably the strangest thing I've ever seen, and something I can't quite explain. Late in the night we watched a red light doing something similar, however it was moving much shorter distances and at a slower speed. It could have been explained by someone with a flashlight wandering around. Too long didn't read, I may have seen a will-o-wisp. So in 2005 I was 14 years old. I recently had moved to my city, so I didn't have many friends, but one. This friend of mine talked about passing New Year's Eve together, and I agreed. My mother was okay with it, so she went on to travel herself. Last minute, my friend backed off and I was to spend the last day of the year alone in a new town at my own home. I didn't think much of it. It really hadn't made me sad. So, 31st December, I was all by myself in my apartment on the 7th floor. Just playing The Sims 2, chatting in MSN with some girl I had a crush on, browsing MySpace, that kind of stuff. Midnight comes, I hear fireworks. Actually, I could see them from my balcony. Nice. Went back to the computer, kept playing games. 3 a.m., still very much awake, and kicking ass in Counter-Strike now. Suddenly, I hear a loud explosive sound in my kitchen. Huh, that's weird. Went there to check, and to my surprise, I found a pile of ashes in a perfectly triangular shape, as if I had just burned a sheaf of paper and kept the ashes all falling in the same place, over my dining table. Weird, huh? But I remember rationalizing and thinking something along the lines of, maybe some firework made its way inside my kitchen through the window. The window was quite far from the table, but okay. Put everything in the trash bin, went back to the computer. At this point, I wasn't even afraid. Didn't think about anything paranormal, even though I'm really afraid of this kind of stuff. 4 a.m. So now sleepiness starts to kick in, and I say my farewells to my crush who was still awake, turn off all the lights at the house, and... Now this is very important. I remember very clearly going into my room and closing the door. I also remember it was a very windy night, so I closed my windows and locked them. I slept in one of those beds that was also a built-in wardrobe, a single piece of furniture. Above where my head should be in the bed, there was this small compartment with small doors. I laid down. I had just closed my eyes when, bam! All of the doors and drawers and windows and everything that could possibly be opened started to open and close in a violent way, repeatedly. I immediately stood on my feet and went running to the elevator's hall, while turning on every single light I could find in the way. When I reached the elevator, I had two choices: go to the first floor through the fire escape or through the elevator. No way in hell would I go through the fire escape, and the elevator didn't seem a good choice either. Waiting for 3 minutes in a 2x2 meter enclosed space just after experiencing something like this? No thanks. I thought about calling neighbors, but guess what? It's New Year's Eve. There's nobody on my floor but me. So I just stood there for 3 hours until it was day again. I'm glad my mother came the next day, otherwise I wouldn't know what to do. That's the first terrible thing that happened to me. I've also had other incidents, but it's minor compared to this. To this day, I'm ashamed to say I'm a grown man with a beard, a job, and a girlfriend, and I'm still afraid of sleeping all by myself at home.